Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I have the pleasure of speaking with Jennifer Silva Redmond right now. She is an editor and an author who has a story called Two of a Kind in San Diego Writers Editors Guild's new anthology called Good Luck with That. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you for having me, Janet.
Thank you for joining us on your boat.
Yes,
Where are you
we
on your boat?
right now we are in Vancouver, Canada.
Oh
Started off in San Diego. We went up the coast of California during our summers when my husband doesn't teach. We get on the boat and go different places, and then we come back down to San Diego in the winter. So that's what we've been doing a couple of years. Excuse me. And so we decided to make the big leap and jump over the border in support of Canada, in support of our friends in Canada. And yeah, we won't get into politics, but yes, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. And unbelievably, it's quite warm today and humid. So I didn't expect that. But of course, it's summertime.
summertime. So, what is it? A motorboat? Is it a sailboat?
It's a sailboat. Actually, the memoir I wrote is Honeymoon at Sea, is the story of our first year on a different sailboat, a 26-foot sailboat, which we were on for many years. The book concerns our first year in Baja California. When we were just married, I knew nothing about boating, and my husband said, "Let's go to Baja for our honeymoon." That turned into a year-long experience, which turned into the beginning of 30 years sailing.
Boy, hold on.
I'm breaking her heart.
All right, I'm following.
Oh, that's funny. I have lived in San Diego since 1971,
Oh,
off and on. We spent a number of years on our boat in Mexico, but I've been calling it home all that time. I was in New York for many years. I was in LA for many years, but we just keep coming back. We have family there, lots of ties, lots of friends, and lots of book ties. But I would say the thing I love best about San Diego is the setting, the geographical setting, the fact that you can be on your boat or on a friend's boat, or you can go and jump on a round the harbor ferry or a whale watching boat. And then that afternoon, you can be out in the desert or you can be up in the mountains. It's just the most incredible geographical setting. And it's just an ideal location. And of course, being able to go over the border to Mexico and Baja, which we love and have spent many years down there. So it's a fantastic location, as my former boss, Lowell Lindsay, used to call it, the Greater Tijuana region.
that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it's a good line.
So, do you just write in memoir?
I mostly write in memoir. The story that's in the anthology is a work of fiction. One of the first stories I had published was published in an anthology called Latinos in Lotus Land. I am Mexican American. I like to say my mom's from that part of Mexico called East LA. So I wrote it about Chavez Ravine. It's set in Chavez Ravine, but the POV character is a dog, and it's called Dodger Dog. He's named Dodger Dog after the Dodger Dogs. It's a kind of a sad story because it's a dog that's wondering what's happened to his owner and why he doesn't come back. Everybody else keeps coming back, so it's a little tearjerker thing. I've written a few short stories that are fiction, but most everything has been memoir, including my memoir, Honeymoon at Sea, and lots of pieces that I have written about sailing for Cruising World, Latitude, and Sail Magazine.
I read your story and I loved it. It's called Two of a Kind. We're hoping everybody will buy the book so they can read your story.
I do have a funny tie-in.
Oh, good.
Speaking of memoir, the story was actually written in the second year that we were sailing. I wrote that story. It just came into my head how some of them do, like complete. I could see it and it was like a little movie in my head. So I just was like writing as fast as I could to get it all down. It isn't exactly the same, but it's very similar to what I wrote that very first day. Of course, being an editor, I edited it. And then you guys helped me edit it more. But I read it to Russell and he liked it. I read it to myself. I said, this is actually good. And then, you know, how we always remember that first big when somebody else says to you something that changes your life. And I had a very good writer friend who was also an author, and she read it and she said to me, "Did anything like this ever happen to you?" And I said, "No, it's a magical story. It's a pretty wild story." I said, "No, why would you think that?" And she said, "Then you're a real writer." And to me,
Oh,
that was just like somebody gave you an award that you didn't know that you were even in the running for. I just went, wow, that's amazing.
You
And
created something somebody thought was so real that they were shocked.
they believed that this wacky thing happened. And I said, no, but thank you. And I'll never forget those words. And I haven't. But I just never, it was in my notebook and then it was on my computer hard drive. And years went by. I was working on other things, I was working for Sunbelt Publications in San Diego. I was full time editor in chief. Had so much going on. And then just a couple of years ago, I came across it again and said, oh, I should put this somewhere. And there you go.
Oh,
So
good. I'm glad
I'm
you gave it to us.
Yeah, so it's a really tie-in, even though it's fiction, there's a whole tie-in with that first year of sailing and trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and it turned out it was a writer.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. We're glad you are. It's a really good story. What do you think? What ultimately inspired you to become a writer?
It was the fact that I had been an actor for many years as a kid. I worked in community theater in San Diego, and then I was lucky enough to be cast at the Old Globe a couple of times. I met my husband there doing Our Town, directed by Jack O'Brien, starring Craig Noel. I know, it was crazy. So lucky. And then I went to LA and then New York trying to become an actor, a working actor, which I was, meaning I was waiting tables. I was working at that. And so many years went by. And then when Russell and I decided to get married when I was 28, I thought I'd be going back to it. But then once we started sailing and traveling, and I just thought, who turns down a life like this? And he's an artist and a writer, so he can work anywhere. So I just said, like, why would I go back to begging people to, can you just listen to my 1 minute monologue? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a tough business. And I'd been doing it for 15 years at that point or more. And so I said, let me see what I can do that will be able to still put out that creative energy, still be able to connect with the world in a creative way. I started looking at my log that I'd been keeping since the day that we left San Diego on the boat. And I thought, oh, that could be a little story. Oh, that could be a little article. And that's where the trouble started.
So you write both fiction and memoir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly nonfiction, but yeah,
So
a couple of things,
covering all the bases.
all the bases.
So you're doing
Exactly.
nonfiction memoir. Okay. These are just fun questions to get to know you. And that's a
Sure.
nice picture. Is that your husband's painting behind you? That's
It is my husband's painting there. Yes.
oh,
Thank
brother.
you. He's one of those multi-talented people. For people that know the Old Globe, he did for many years the posters for the Shakespeare Festival as well as for the main stage.
You're multi-talented too. So we don't care about your husband part. Well, the next question I'm going to say, what is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
I think the fact that I'm an editor, that I have to put on my own editor's hat once I've written something. And because I'm used to editing other people's work, I try to use that same process for for editing my own work. And I won't say it doesn't work. It works to a certain point. I was very lucky when the publisher of my memoirs, Books, out of Toronto, Canada. And once we signed the contract, she assigned me a wonderful editor, Deanna McFadden. We talked, of course, about both being editors. And then she'd write me an email and it would always say, I know you know this, but you really have to show not tell in this scene.
Oh, no,
I know you know this, but you really have to have this scene come to life with more dialogue. I know you know this, but don't be like her. I do know it for all of the writers out there or aspiring writers out there who are English majors and think, I'll be able to edit my own work because I understand punctuation and all that. What we can't see is how much we're supplying in our mind to what's on the page. And the reader is going, huh? What's that? Oh, how do we get there?
so common. I just can't stand that we
Yes.
all have the same problems. At the same
Right?
times, I'm relieved. So we're not alone. We're
Exactly.
all by ourselves in a room.
People can come to me with a book and say, I've been workshopping this for 5 years and I mean, it's been through this and this process. And I come back and go, I really liked it. And here's what I liked about it. And then I say, you do realize her husband's name changed from Bruce to John at chapter 45. And they'll be like, how did that? So things can get by that are really big things because we can't read our own book.
So you have a
accountability.
what do you have? Who's
I
reading?
have a writers group. My friend Lisa and Maria, who both work at Sunbelt Publications, we met there 20 years ago or more. 25 years ago. Oh my gosh, 25 years
Now,
ago. And they now run the company. So they're in my writing group along with Lori Gibson, who's a well known San Diego editor, and our wonderful friend Carol Burt, who is a wonderful writer and jack of all trades. She's an entrepreneur. And that group of ladies, in addition to some other writer friends of mine, we just keep egging each other on. Lori's coming out with a book soon, and everybody's doing their projects. We need community. Absolutely. And I also have San Diego Writers Inc. that I teach there, and I San Diego Southern California Writers Conference in San Diego. I have a whole tribe of people that I've been working with and studying with, and that have been studying with me. So it's all a give and take community.
what does literary success look like to you?
Oh, doing, I love being able to go to groups and talk about the process of writing more, even than talking about my own memoir specifically, but about the process of memoir writing or the process of writing in general, the process of rewriting and all the things we've just been talking about. How do you get distance on your writing? What are some little tricks that I can give people to help them do self editing before they pay an editor? So that kind of thing, I really think of that as literary success in a different way than the typical, I want to be on a bestseller list. Of course, everybody wants to be on a bestseller list, but also just having a conversation. I have a Substack newsletter that I write about marketing, I write about editing, I do book reviews. And I love just the give and take people in our community asking questions, answering questions. Oh, I know that one. Oh, I can give you a good insight on that. Just how giving and being a part of that community, I guess, is what I consider literary success.
You've got your fingers in a lot of different communities. You review books, you just said, right?
I do.
And you're also teaching. You teach for Writers Inc. Is that what
Yes.
you're saying?
And the Southern California Writers Conference, which is held in San Diego every year for the last 29 years or something.
Well, do you do a hopeful writing class at the
I
con?
do. Yeah, I do. I teach writing different things that have been like talking about POV or talking about tense, why does one work better for one? Why is third person better than first person in this book? Or what way of writing is going to benefit your story the most? And also, as I discussed, how can you work on your writing before you spend money for a professional? How can you have a leg up on that? And
When you're teaching these classes, what's a common trap for aspiring writers that you've noticed?
I think the commonest trap is I'm done working on this book, so therefore it must be done.
Oh
You know what I
man.
mean?
Yeah.
A
And
book
there's
isn't done because you're tired of working on it. It just means that phase, the generative phase is over. The generative, I'm putting the story down, I'm fleshing out my characters, the setting and all of those wonderful things. But that's when you need other eyes on it. Beta readers, everybody knows about trading off with your friends to have people read stuff. And sometimes just the smallest input from somebody can make such a huge difference, whether it's good or bad, whether it's good feedback or, gee, I didn't get this, or I don't know where you're going.
yeah, as
So
far
I think, and
no, go ahead, sorry.
no, I think it's just when you've been working on something for whether it's been 5 years or 15 years, you're just like, I'm done. I want it to be done. And unfortunately, now we have the ability to very quickly push the button and put something out there and it's not ready. Like our moms and dads taught us, you only get one chance to make a first impression. So you do not want that premature publication out there. You don't want that, that almost ready, that almost professional level. And because we're all in such a rush, when I was working for Sunbelt, I used to say a book never happens fast enough for an author or slow enough for a publisher. Publisher's always going, let's do one more round. Let's check the color. Let's have a print. Let's do another galley. And as self publishers or independent publishers, as many listeners are, you need to wear both hats. So you have to say to yourself, whoa, calm down. I have to have it for that event I'm having. If it's going to get in the way of the book being great and professional and done, then postpone the event. Don't rush the book.
Ultimately, is it then you who's deciding when it's time to launch?
I think in the case we all look forward to getting a publisher, I was very excited when my publisher, when we found each other, and she loved my book. And she said in January of 2023, I love it and I want it out in August. And I just went, because I knew it was done from my point of view, but it wasn't done in terms of production, editing, and that kind of thing. And I didn't know how much better it would get with Deanna working with me, which really helped it. So I think unless you're a self-publisher and you're really in charge of your own imprint, you should be listening to a publisher or at least someone that you have hired to be a professional set of eyes. Because a lot of times people will say, oh, I love what you did, the work you did on my book, and I'm getting ready to publish it. I'm like, well, I didn't do a copy edit. You also need a copy edit. And they'll be like, oh, no, it seems clean. I've had lots of people read it. Like, 10 mistakes don't seem like a lot, but if the book's out there for 10 years, or let's hope at least 10 years it's in print, maybe 20, you're going to be kicking yourself about those mistakes for 10 or 20 years.
Forever.
Words of wisdom from an editor. Exactly. Forever. Forever.
So are you self-published or traditionally published?
It's traditionally published. It's a small woman-owned Canadian press called Rebooks, as in regarding books. And they're based in Toronto. And Rebecca Eckler is a best-selling writer of like 10 or more books. And then she decided to go into publishing. And she's a force of nature. She's wonderful. And she's highlighting a lot of women's stories and specifically focusing on Jewish women and Canadian women. And I'm neither, so I just got really lucky. But I love our sisterhood. It's great. There's some really good books they put out in the last couple of years. And I was really lucky to be one of her first chosen books. I am working on a book about editing, which is going to be quasi memoir with tips and that sort of thing, or that's how I envision it at this point. Honeymoon at Sea is the memoir that's out right now. And the subtitle is How I Found Myself Living on a Small Boat. So, meaning both senses of the word. I found myself there, but I also found myself.
I would read that. How about writer's block? Is that real for you?
I don't really think writer's block is an actual thing. I think it was Michael Stephen Gregory of the Southern California Writers Conference said, we never get speaker's block. We never get talker's block. We don't.
Well,
So I went out with my friend and I just couldn't think of anything. I couldn't talk. It's like we set this idea that people will be blocked, I think based on a lot of famous authors from the past. I don't know, Faulkner, or Hemingway, or somebody said, I'm blocked. And it caught on because somebody was, I think, purely my opinion, that somebody's writing something that they either don't believe in, don't understand. And that's why we have to write what we know or what we feel passionate about. Because if you're trying to write something like the worst is trying to write to trends or trying to write to success, trying to write something you think other people will like, as opposed to writing a story you're excited and passionate about. It's nobody that's writing a book that they're excited about, passionate about says, I have writer's block. You get up in the morning, you're like, okay, quick, let's do this. Let's walk the dog. Now I can sit down and write because there's never enough hours in the day to write, in my opinion.
I think that's a really interesting point because I'm finding I have a terrific writing group that I'm in. When somebody's writing about something that they don't know what they're talking about. They're taking a stab of it. And I'm not being prejudiced here, but it's frequently when you flip the roles of trying to write like a woman and you're a man or a profession you don't know enough to be talking as if you were an expert.
One could throw out the title American Dirt. That would be an example for me. It just rang false on every level to me. Other people obviously have enjoyed it, but to me, it seemed like somebody going, hey, and a book like this would sell well, even though I have no idea of this world or this situation or anything about cartels or whatever, but I'll just make it up.
It just doesn't ring true and it stinks.
A gal who writes a wonderful Substack, Janine Kitchell, she wrote a book about the cartels with a woman who gets thrust into being a cartel head, and she's a young woman. And that book felt so real because she had lived there. She lived in Cancun. She lived in on the Maya coast there. I'm trying to think of the name, Tulum. Tulum Takedown is the second one. And isn't that terrible? I'm blanking on the name of her first book, but Tulum Takedown was the sequel. And it's this young woman, and it's all the excitement and fun and doubts and all that. But it feels real because she knows the place, she knows the people, she knows the culture. It
Right.
doesn't have to do with having a certain last name or having it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally
So
makes
I
sense.
agree with you, though. The right what you know is crucial.
Now all these things, ugh, too bad it's all true. What a bummer. POV. Whoa, another set of eyes. Yes.
If it was easy, everybody'd do it. That's what I like to tell people. People go, but that sounds like so much more work. Yeah, if it was easy, everybody'd write a book.
Why?
If it was just, I had this idea, I sat down, I wrote it out in longhand, and then somehow a publisher got it and they did all the work for me. It's just, if that ever was true, which I don't really think it was, that time is long gone. Long gone.
I think we know the answer to this, but life experiences have shaped your writing most.
It's absolutely has been living on a boat and sailing. Being in Mexico, one, living in Mexico off and on for almost 10 years. We went down the one trip and then we came back and spent more time there and also places in Florida and New Orleans on the boat. But just when you live somewhere, as we all know, if you can go somewhere and actually live in another country or another state or another province and be there for a number of months, you can really get a sense of the place. If you're there for 2 or 3 days, that happens in traveling. It's not that it's wrong. You can have a great time for those 2 or 3 days, but you can't really feel that you lived there or experienced it as in any way like a local would, or even gotten to know locals. We're lucky enough that we have people that just yesterday, a friend that I know from online writers groups, and we spent the day with her and her husband here in Vancouver. So it's like just tying in with people and getting to hang out in their backyard and drink wine and talk about life. Writers, what writers do. But all of those things have been an immense, a huge part of shaping who I turned out to be as a writer. And I think I always tell people if you have a great story, you don't have to really be a great writer. In other words, you just have to get out of the way of the story. We all know people who can tell a good story. And it doesn't really matter if they just are telling what happened when they went to the grocery store that morning. They can elaborate and go on tangents and do a song and dance. And some writers are like that. You don't really care what they're writing about. Tom Robbins or somebody. It's just everything's magical, everything's wild, everything's funny, everything's unexpected. But other people, they really need the craft to tell a story, especially genre books. You have to know the genre, know your craft.
You have more time on your boat because you're distracted,
Yeah.
you left alone.
Yes. At times we do. You hit it right on the head. There will be times that we're anchored somewhere or in a marina and everything is going good. The boat doesn't need being worked on, or the boat, we do months in the boatyard for this, that, the other thing every few years, like everybody does on a boat. But there are times when everything is working and the weather's right and you're not in any trouble with where you are in an anchorage or in a marina. And then, yes, you can have a lot more time than you would living and working in a city and having to deal with traffic and getting to work and commuting and all that. There are days that I think I had a lot planned, accomplished today, and none of it got done. But we moved to the boat or we did this, like you say, get out of harm's way. We've seen in the age of climate change, people get up and think they're going to work that day and their entire house gets swept away or burned. We're certainly not complaining about having to deal with weather and storms and that kind of thing on a boat, but it is a reminder that life and Mother Nature have the last say on what you're doing today or tomorrow or next week.
If you have to pare down to live the way you live on a boat, do you think there's any correlation with you being a writer?
You're not reaching at all. As a matter of fact, I think as an editor and as a writer, what's the famous Strunk and White book where he says, omit useless words? That's what we're always trying to do as writers, and certainly what I'm trying to do as an editor. She thought about when she used to do this and she remembered how this and this. And I'm like, just tell me what it is she remembered. Tell me what it is she thought. You don't need all those words. I get what you're saying. She looked out the window and saw this. How many times had they sat out there and had this conversation? She looked out there, she remembered, and then she thought. So that's constantly what I'm doing as an editor and hopefully as a writer as well. That's the same thing. I had to laugh when during the pandemic, does it spark joy in you? If not, get rid of it. The
But
gal that
yeah,
was
the
helping
cleaner,
people decluttering, the Japanese gal.
I
And
felt for
that
that. I
was,
loved that.
I loved it too. But it really, it put a phrase for what I'd been doing for all these years. I love this blouse. I love that my mom and I bought it in that boutique we used to get to. I love the color. I love the fabric. I don't wear it. So why do I still own it? I own it because of that connection to that day when I bought it. And that it should be being worn by somebody. Somebody should be enjoying it. And the same thing with books. People are always giving me, oh, you helped me with my book. Here's my copy of my book. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad, but don't need another book because if I take that, I have to get rid of, I'm looking over here, my cookbook, my Madrigal Spanish, a copy of my own book, the Knot book, the Tactics book, the book about where we're traveling right now. We have a very small bookshelf. It's like this big. So those books have to be on that shelf. I'm not going to get my phone out to see how to tie a double clove hitch. I need the book. I need to be able to open it.
The way that you live could tie into your editing, editor and a writer, where just let's get to the point.
Right. I definitely think so. It's Russell likes to say, cut to the chase. Cut to the chase. It's not, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then suddenly we're in the moment. Another great bit of wisdom from Michael Stephen Gregory: don't start the book before you start the story. In other words, the story has to start where things are at stake, where things have changed. The inciting incident, we've all heard that phrase. Where did that person's life take a big turn? Where did things suddenly go all to hell? Or conversely, change for the better? Where's that moment? And that's where it's close as possible to where the book should start, not 3 chapters of my characters from here, and she grew up in here, and her parents got divorced when she was 5. And it might be good to know that at some point, but not in advance because people will get bored by those first chapters. Let's put it down.
So do you do most of your meetings on Zoom because you're on a boat?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Do you-
It's fun to get to see people in person, but I'm so used to it. And funny enough, I've actually, I was saying, instituted a policy. It sounds very bureaucratic, but I basically have I don't talk to authors before I work on their books. And people will say, how do they know whether they like you or not? I'm like, if they can go on my website. I have 27 years of testimonials. I've been in this business that long. What happens when I start talking to authors is, what do they want to talk about? They want to talk about the book I'm about to read. And if they tell me about the book, then I read it and I go back and I'm thinking to myself, did I read that or did they tell me I was going to read that? You see what I'm saying? I want to read the book just like a reader would. The reader's not going to sit down and talk to you for an hour about the book, right? So they're not going to get the whole, whoa, 10 years ago I did this and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need to know that. I also teach a pitch class. And in the pitch class, I always say, don't tell me why you're doing the book. Don't tell me why you chose to. Don't tell me the story behind it or the story behind your life. Just tell me what happens in the book. That's what we're pitching. I tell people, save it for the People magazine interview, right? When people want to come and talk to you about how'd you have the idea for this story, then talk all you want about it. Talk all day. Would you write a bunch of accessory type articles and interviews and all that? But it's not the book. The book is the story. When did that person's life change? How did they go about changing or growing to become a different person by the end of the book? That's the hook. That's the pitch. That's what we want to know about. But I think in this world of reality television and reality book selling, talk stories where you're on. I mean, I do it. I go on and talk about being on the boat, or I talk about, that's part of how I market my book because the honeymoon continues, right? That's a big part of selling my book because we are still traveling. We are still together. How did this come about? But I'm also not expecting that to be the be all and end all. It has to be part of what you're marketing. If I talk to an author about their book and then I can't sit down and read that book as an unbiased read.
Makes total sense what you're saying. I'm curious as to why we are not good at describing what our book or story is? Why do people falter? Why do we stumble on that?
And I don't know why, but it is something that I run across over and over again. And I've taught pitch classes at Writers Inc., at Writers Conference, at the Writers Digest Writers Conference, lots of places. And it's always the same thing. People either want to tell me the background to the book, why they did it, if it's nonfiction usually, or they want to tell me everything that happened. They want to tell me the plot. This guy wakes up one morning and I'm like, no, that's not how you tell your friend about a book you just loved. We don't say, okay, it opens with this gal. She gets up, she gets in her car, she drives to work. It's the
Yeah.
same drive she's done for 25 years. You know what I mean? No, you say, oh, it's like Prodigal Summer, only it's set in Kenya. We compare things, or we say it's a book that will make you feel better about humanity. We sometimes have a thesis more than we have a plot. And I'm not saying that would be a way to pitch a book. They'll make you feel good about humanity, but it's closer to how we actually share with friends and family and people that we want to tell a book about. Oh, you just got to go see this movie. It's going to make you feel better about humanity or whatever. We give a kind of a, how does that book make you feel, or how does it make you feel more prepared to deal with life? If it's a nonfiction book, oh, you don't understand about investing in the stock market. This is the book. This book will straighten it out for you.
So
You
it's
know,
passion. It's like acting since you were an actor, right?
yes,
Because you're using
yes,
your knowledge, your practice, your
right,
passion.
right.
You don't want to be a bore.
Exactly. You really got to be able to say it in a sentence. You want to be able to be on, in other words, say it well, but you don't want it to be about you by the same token. Unless sometimes with a memoir, let's say you were an actor and you say it's a Robin Williams, if he'd written a memoir, would be, hey, I'm this person and I did this life and you're gonna laugh, you're gonna cry. It would be a dog and pony show like that. But most books, you want the author out of the way. You don't want them saying, I've always been intrigued by cozy mysteries. So 10 years ago, I decided to go to London and stay in an Airbnb and it was haunted. And you know what I'm saying? It's, okay, but what happens in the actual freaking book? Here's what you aim for. And I heard this from Marla Miller, who she and I did a thing called Pitch Witches for years. And so she said, what you want is that agent or that editor to say, tell me more. That's what you're aiming for. So you're not aiming for, oh my God, stop talking. You've been talking for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? What you want is a tease. It's like when you go to a restaurant, they give you a little taster and you go, oh yeah, I want more of that. At the farmer's market, here, take a taste. Oh my God, world's greatest nectarines. Give me 5 pounds. You know what I mean?
Still complicated. Which scene or chapter in your story, Two of a Kind, which I love, what is your favorite part in it? It's lovely, romantic, making me feel good.
I think it was the idea of two people who, if they were walking down the street, wouldn't necessarily, or run into each other in an elevator or whatever, would not immediately say, oh, that's somebody, that they feel a sort of sense of otherness, that other person is different from them. And I think in a world where we find ourselves pitted against each other often and assuming a lot about the other person based just how they dress or what they
Mhm.
look like to us, we make assumption about them based on how they dress or how they look. That there can be a lot more to them. I think it's an important thing to think about.
You're
Right.
put into a situation where you have to talk to somebody. You're not
Exactly.
held against your will. You
But
have to
that's what I
push.
liked about it. It's not the same cliched stuck in an elevator or stuck in a car or stuck in a, I don't know, a tent or in some disaster where you're thrown together. It was something more gentle and more kind of fun, but also, like, as you say, a concrete situation that you can't get out of without embarrassing yourself.
That's well put. Do you read the same type of books you write?
I love memoir. I read a lot of memoir. I'm just one of those people that I think a good story is a good story. So I read everything from science fiction and fantasy. I read romance. I read women's fiction, commercial fiction. I don't read a lot of spooky stuff or anything like that. I just, okay, I could just watch the news for that. Scary happens all the time now. I like a little thrillerness, but I think not anything like that. But I do love memoir.
What topic would you like to explore next?
I'm writing a book, which is obviously nonfiction about my life as an editor. And I hope to be able to bring in not only how I got into editing, because there isn't really a career path to becoming an editor. You can get an English degree, which I don't have, but many people do that go into editing or go into journalism. It's a way of explaining how somebody might end up in that position, but also some tips for people, things that I realize in my work that people can go, oh, that's something I should avoid doing if I want to not piss off editors. You know what I mean? Everything from weird query letters all the way to sloppy or lazy writing.
You are an editor. You started out as a writer, I'm going to assume,
Yes.
and then you discovered that you were good at editing. Is that how it happened?
I did. My dad was an editor, so I understood the concept of it. But like many people, I thought, oh, it's all about spelling and punctuation. And it is that too. But what I found was just like a lot people can be a good book reviewer, a good movie reviewer, that I was able to see in reading something what was not just, hey, it should be more interesting. But I lost interest. Go fix it. Be funny or be creative, make it more interesting. But that I could say it feels like you gave me way too much information at the beginning, or I got bored before the story really started, or in the middle it just went weak and things were uninteresting and there was a dull point from this chapter to this chapter, or this should really come later in the book, or things like that. My husband and I were down in Mexico the second time when we worked on a magazine called the Sea of Cortez Review, which we founded together. And I edited that collection, that first collection. We did that for 3 years. And I thought, I like this. This is fun because people would always say the same thing to me. I have a great story, but I'm not really a writer. And I'm like, okay, but you wrote a story. So I think you are a writer. You know what I mean? But people were always, I'm not really a writer.
It's like being an
Yeah.
actor and you're trying to be
Yes.
funny and they say,
Yes.
funnier.
Be funnier. Exactly. And I think too, in acting, you always strive for one thing. It doesn't matter if it's comedy to restoration, drama to Shakespeare to improv. Be honest. Just be honest. Be believable. So that once you've crossed that threshold, you've spent years doing that, learning that when you sit down with a pen and paper or your keyboard and you start writing about an experience, it's second nature to really say how you were feeling. It's second nature to not try and hide behind a lot of falderall, a lot of frippery or surface stuff, and just say, okay, I was freaking out. And here's what I thought might happen. And then I panicked and did this. And sometimes to be willing to say, boy, I was dead wrong about this, or I was a real idiot, or I did something so stupid, because that's what makes all writing interesting, but especially memoir. If you're always, I've read memoirs, the person's just brilliant from day one, and then they just keep going, being brilliant and making good choices. And you're like, okay, it's not interesting.
In general, do you just think people get older and then they retire and they went, wait a minute, I am interested. I think I'm going to write about myself.
Oh, yeah. I would say that most of my authors are at least in their 50s. I have very few authors, a handful of authors that I work with that are still, I would say, starting out, or they've got another career, but they want to be a writer. And so they're doing that at the same time, and they maybe in their 40s or something. But most of the people I work with are either they've done this where they've really created their own imprint, basically. They're independent authors that have started their own imprint doing a number of books. My friend Gail Carline has done 7 books, done maybe 5 or 6 of those, but she's got different series that are different voices, even different names, and is very much a professional publishing house of her own. But she's willing to spend the time and keep coming back to it. So I think, yeah, I think it is a factor of age to say, hey, I've got some stories to tell, and I'm willing to learn how to tell them better.
Have you ever had to say, this isn't so interesting?
I don't think so. Where I've had that happen is where someone's writing a novel and it's very obvious that what they're writing is their real life experience, because many times people become too wedded to what actually happened.
Mm.
You know what I
Mm.
mean? I had these 4 good friends in college. So in the novel, the person has 4 friends. In a novel, you don't really want 4 friends. You want 1 friend, unless there's some reason that you have the other 2 friends are at odds. And maybe at the most, you've got the protagonist and 2 friends because it's just too much for us. And why? Why should we have to remember 4 friends? What are they doing there? So each character has to have a reason for being there. But we have a tendency, well, what I know, I want to write what I know. So I'm going to write it exactly the way it happened. But it's not interesting the way it happened. So that's why memoir has to come from a place where there was a time in my life, a fairly closed period, a capsule of time in which I went through a process changing due to illness, due to loss of anything, relationship, home, or I discovered something, or because of the loss, I discovered something. So that's a different thing than an autobiography, which is I was born here, then this happened, and this happened, or a novel in which things have to happen. You have to keep our interest. You can use elements of your life, but if you're just writing your life as a novel, chances are you're going to have to change it a lot to make it interesting. It depends on the genre. There's a wonderful writer in San Diego, Carl Bondurel. He was a banker. So he understands being a banker, but he writes these characters that are bankers, but he doesn't dwell on that, but it feels very real. His stories are thrilling and exciting, and they're set in La Jolla and different places. Last one was in Tijuana and La Jolla and jumping all over the place. And they're exciting and they keep you on the edge of your seat. But when he writes the stuff that he knows about, he knows it. And so he's brought the part that he really understands and the settings and all that. But then the magic is how good of a writer you are.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. This was my pleasure. I didn't know you did so many things. I'm dazzled and impressed by your beauty and talent. And I enjoyed your story very much. I learned a great deal from you.
I'm excited to be in the anthology and I'm excited to get to do this today.
So it was my pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Janet. It was really fun. I enjoyed our chat, and I'm, of course, very excited to read all of the anthology entries and very honored to be in the collection. And thanks again for having me on today.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye.